2024, we saw the first year of the expanded playoff. 12 teams. Tennessee was one of those teams. And, it went on, and you had the Ohio State crowned national champion all the way on January the 20th, 21st, whatever it was. But first team in the expanded 12. Should the playoffs expand even further? I don't think it's a matter of should they or shouldn't they. It's a matter of when is that going to happen. Conversations, as Brent pointed out on the board over the weekend, athletic directors from the SEC, the Big Ten, going to be meeting in New Orleans this week, and they're going to be discussing, how they're going to expand these college football playoffs. And Ross Dellinger put out a story over here at Yahoo Sports that kind of outlined what this could look like, either 14 or 16 teams, following a model of 4-4, which is 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, for the Big Ten, then 2-2, 2 for the ACC, 2 from the Big 12, 1, which would be Notre Dame if it qualifies, and then, of course, 1 group of 5. Interesting stuff. A lot to unpack here as well, because if you go to this, Brent, then not down the line, you will make the switch to finally to 9 conference games in the SEC. But overall, your thoughts, we'll see what comes of this. We'll see if anything happens over the next couple weeks. But expand the playoffs, 14 or 16 with 4 AQs for the SEC and the Big Ten.
Well, first of all, you're not going to 9 games unless TV gives you more money. You just keep playing 8. So,
I thought that was a given, essentially.
Well, to get to 9, that money's gonna have to get there, and I think it will. All of this is about cash. Okay, let's be really clear here about what this is. Everybody's got to make more money. There's no doubt that the Big Ten and the SEC, for all the talk about the smaller schools not having enough money, and well, what do they do from a rev share standpoint and everything else? All the Power 4 schools need more cash. So how do you generate more cash? Well, your best product is your college football playoffs. Now, the question becomes, when are you maximizing that cash, Rob Lewis, and when are you diluting the product? Are you diluting the product at 16 teams? Are you diluting the product in any way at 14 teams? I think it's a given it's going to 14. I think 16 is more interesting. But I think when you look at it is 4 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC too many, in the league? Are you diluting the regular season? One of the beauties of this past year, was the fact that November was so important. Every game counted. You get 4 automatic qualifiers. How much does that dilute the regular season? Is that something that goes into consideration at all, or is this just all about cash and that part doesn't matter?
I don't think it dilutes it. The TV ratings will eventually tell us, but I don't think that it dilutes it. It might dilute the bowl games further, a little bit, but I don't think that was. That happened this year, and I think the benefits, the excitement of having the playoff far outweighed, a bowl game being played on December 27th having less, of an important feel.
I was wrong. I thought going in this year that I thought the regular season would be polluted just a little bit. I thought that there's not 12 teams that deserve to play for a national championship. There's not 12 enough good teams. And then you saw the way this specific year played out, and it was like, there's not one dominant team out there. Oregon's ranked number 1, but is Oregon the best team? What team looks good that week? And of course, Tennessee got into the field, but of course, from the outside, one could argue, look at those first round games. They're blowouts, right? So why are you continuing to go, adding more teams to the dance, if you will? So I do think that's something, but overall, I was wrong. I thought this was like the best regular season that I can remember because, again, as you pointed out, late October, all of November, it's like, holy crap, you got to win this game or you're not making the playoffs, or, you can unseed this team, that you can knock this team out of the playoffs, and what can happen? It was so much fun. It was a blast, and I think that will only continue. It doesn't matter if you had 2 more teams or 4 more teams. I think that part is going to continue in the regular season.
Well, it makes everybody feel like they've got a chance. And the first round games were blowouts. But guess what? A team that was the 8th seed, now they were 6th overall in the rankings, because you had the 2 teams that got buys that were below them. They still won the national title. A team that wasn't in the top 4, the overall rankings, won the national title because
the team that played wasn't in the top 4 either.
Yeah, they were able to overcome the loss to Oregon and the terrible loss to Michigan. The 4 teams that got buys, now again, 2 of them probably not worthy, but all 4 of them that got buys got bounced. I think I mean, expanding it, does it dilute it? I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to say, well, there's not that many teams. Maybe, but like it still makes for creative matchups and fun matchups, especially if you get rid of some of the whole like, well, the ACC deserves a bye or the Big 12 deserves a bye or whatever. Like, just put the first top 4 teams. And if they're all Big 10 teams, if they're all SEC teams or whatever, let them be the ones that get the buys. That shouldn't be. There shouldn't be a like, well, let's try to have equality and make it fair for all the conferences.
According to this article from Ross Dellinger, the 14-team playoff top 2 seeds would get buys. There would be no buys in 16-team structure. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, do you like a bye? How did the bye teams do, right? Or do you want to keep playing? I mean, there's always those discussions. I mean, I think – look, the bottom line is this. It's expanding, not in 25, but it's going to expand in 26. But because the reason it's going to expand is the new financial agreements. I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to make more money off of the college football playoffs in 26 and through 31 than they have to this point. They're the 2 conferences that are dictating these things. I mean, they are. And I know that the Big 12's got concerns and the ACC has concerns, but as Greg Sankey big boyed him and said, and it's at the bottom of that article, like, look, we tried to work on this a few years ago, and y'all drug your feet for 2 years, and we told all of you then, we'll just go do it. The Big Ten and we'll just go figure it out. And basically, they've gotten control of the college football playoff. It's what's ended up happening, and so it's going to change. Is it going to go 14? Is it going to go 16? I think the other fascinating part of this too, that's not discussed in that article, that has to be examined is what does the calendar look like with it? I mean, what do you do? I mean, is college football really comfortable playing the last Saturday in August and finishing their season at the end of January? Is that where they want to be? Do they want their national championship game on the open date before the Super Bowl? And then if that's the case, how do you marry things together with the NFL where you're not competing against the NFL?
And with the transfer portal.
And the transfer portal. I mean, that's the part. Look, I get it. And here's what we know, Rob. I mean, how many times have ADs, presidents, and people looked at something and went, wait a minute, you're going to write me how big of a check? Yeah, I'm good. Just write the check. And they don't examine the depths of all of it, right? We'll just take the check.
I mean, they've got to start earlier. I think they will. I mean, I think it's, like you're talking about, too much money involved. I mean, I think everybody involved probably saw that, bumping heads with the NFL in January. I mean, college football playoff got plenty of attention, but it would have been a much bigger deal if that thing happens, right around the new year. And I don't know if you can do it I doubt you could do it on a traditional New Year's Day like the bowl games, but I mean, you can do it close. You can do it much closer than January 20th. There's a lot of dead time in December, and I know you get the transfer portal and recruiting. You got to figure out, but I mean, however you're talking about, NFL or big television networks writing huge checks. I mean, they don't care about the transfer portal and coach having to work a 12-hour day. They want to program prime time on those first couple of weeks in December, and they look at the inventory that they just got.
Well, and I don't know how many ADs are worried about what the December calendar looks like for a head football coach. I mean, you're making $9-10 million. I need, I've got a $230 million budget. I need money, right? Like I need money to pay rev share, and I've got money. We need money for all of these types of things, and we're sitting here looking at. I mean, potentially, if you add a conference game, that could be another $5 million. Well, that's big. I mean, that's a huge payout. The payout in the playoff bigger. Nobody has whole lot of sympathy in December for those guys when you look at how much money they're making. I'm not saying December's right. I think the month of December is screwed completely up. But I think at the end of the day, it's a profit loss statement, and you need more profit in there. And an expanded college football playoff can bring more profit, which is what these guys are looking at. I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, I think that's what this thing is going to ultimately end up being is like, how can you get me the most money?
I think what you're looking at too is I think you're looking at not having these big layoffs, like this, play next week, play again, next week, play again. Like Not having the
How long did Georgia
stimulus.
go? How long did Georgia go without playing? After the SEC championship game, with their bye.
About
3 weeks, right? Because I mean, that championship game was first weekend of December, right? And they didn't play until the end of the month.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I mean, here's the problem.
Or New Year's Day.
And I'm getting. I agree with you guys. I mean, from a speeded up standpoint, but if you're a TV executive and you're ESPN, what's moving the needle from a rating standpoint in the wintertime? Is it college basketball games where there's 16 on a night, or is it football?
Football.
And if it's football, don't you want as many games as you can get in the month of January for football? Don't you want to be on center stage the week before the Super Bowl where everybody's watching MegaCast and all different versions of your national championship game, and that is the only game brewing? I mean, if you're a TV executive, I don't know that you're worried about somebody being off, and I don't know that you're worried about bleeding into the next semester and all those things, because from an audience standpoint, how much better are you when you're the only game in town? Everybody's waiting on the Super Bowl. Oh, we have the national championship in football, and let's play it on Saturday instead of on Monday night.
Well,
I don't do anything in the weekend.
I don't think they're worried about the transfer portal of the calendar. I think they got a lot of dead air. I mean, what are they showing in the third Saturday night in December? Rudolph rerun, or Georgia versus Texas in the semifinals. If you speed it up,
but how do you? I mean, if you speed it up with expanded with more games, more playoff games, then you're eliminating conference championship weekend.
Oh, I mean, who would care? Would you?
Well, I mean,
under
Ross's
this model,
article, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, under this model, they would rank them straight from the college football playoff rankings, 1 through 14 or 1 through 16. So you would not need a conference championship to secure an automatic bye.
To Hubbard's point, Greg Sankey probably ain't giving that money back.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, that's a huge moneymaker.
Which is why it said in Ross's article, maybe a play-in type game for that 4th seed. If you're the SEC and you're the Big Ten. So now, instead of it being the championship game, it's like going to Dayton to get in the tournament. It's a play-in type game.
It would have been Alabama and South Carolina this year.
Yeah.
Who would have watched that?
Everybody. Like everybody. Yeah. I mean, I'm for that. I mean, yeah.
It's in some obscure location like Dayton. Like,
Unlike Dayton.
But I mean, again, you're not looking to cut games. Obviously, you're looking to add games, because at the end there's going to be more revenue available to it when they're games that count. So what do you do with your regular season? And how do you manage the calendar part of it is going to be pretty interesting.
You think about little things like, obviously, transfer portal, new semesters, declaring for the NFL draft. Like, I mean, those dates, does that date have to move back? Because, I mean, like, what if a kid has a monster run in the playoffs and, he could have catapulted himself into the draft, but all of a sudden he didn't declare because that was 2 weeks prior.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a trickle-down effect to what we were talking about earlier. That, it's like people didn't think about the trickle-down effect of, we'll just let name, image, and likeness. No rules. It's all good. Right. They didn't look at the trickle-down effect of what all happens with all this stuff.
No, I agree. I mean, they didn't look at the trickle-down effect of a December window, early signing. I mean, they didn't look at any of those things, right? And now when you're talking about millions of dollars on the line, they're really not going to be looking at it. I mean, it's like, I see a check. I see a large amount of money. How can I get the most and out of that? Out of all those things in the Dellinger article that I thought was maybe one of the most fascinating and most compelling things for fans is the idea of the SEC and the Big Ten playing an SEC Big Ten football challenge, where instead of playing a payday game, right, and instead of going out and trying to scramble to find a Power 5 game against somebody in the Big 12 or the old Pac-10 or 12, whatever we're calling that now you get what you got to start the season. You get Michigan, Texas, right? You would get Ohio State, Alabama sometime during the season. And those two, that would be your Power 5 opponent for each league, is that they would just play each other. And then that could be another one-off for TV, a TV spectacular event that makes you more money. Hint, hint, more money, more money. You know,
And I bet, and I don't know if they would do this. However, the SEC, if they wanted to do that, the head coaches would trade that for a ninth game in a heartbeat.
And here's my question: is that
A
going
ninth conference game? I mean,
and I think that would be neat if they did it as home and homes, or at least
JT, you'd finally get to go to Seattle, maybe.
yeah. Since he's supposed to go there in a few years anyway. I'd like to go to Camp Randall.
well, but see, here's the interesting thing too. When you look at scheduling, and I think we're going to see this coming down the pike a little bit. How many people are looking at where Indiana was in their schedule and go, you know what? We need to get out of a game, potentially that's not a, that it's a Power 5 game. We would be better off playing a weaker Power 5 opponent or a non-Power 5 opponent because it helps us get in the playoff. That's where ADs have to come and figure some of this stuff out quickly too, because you're talking about scheduling on down the line here, and how many people go the Indiana route and go the easier schedule path, and put themselves in a better position to get in a playoff. Now, do you have to do that if you're in the, you got 4 automatic bids in your league? My answer to that is probably not. But those are all of the trickle down things that come down the pike as well. Because I'm telling you, there are going to be some teams out there who move their schedule around to try to soften it because they think it's going to give them a better chance to get in the playoff because of what happened to Indiana. It's going to happen, I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think
you're right.
Go, hey, let's schedule a win, right? Let's find a way to get a win.
Megan, put that schedule back up on the screen. I mean, because she has it. Like, look at the top line. Take Syracuse out. Let's say that's just another super weak team. Look at the first 6 games. I mean, like, you have Georgia, which is a home game, but the rest of those games, like, are you sitting there going, "Oh wow," I mean, like that's a pretty even with Syracuse, it's not an overly hard start minus the game against Georgia. I mean, like, Tennessee honestly has a great schedule next year again, and everything's spaced out pretty well for Tennessee, where if they can mesh together as a team and find the right pieces and holes that they're trying to fill, could be right back in the CFP.
Yeah. Going off what Brent said, I think in terms of a fan's interest, I think the best thing about this article was the potential for a play-in game. I just think that would be so cool because, again, like going back to what we said, there's no sense in having a conference championship game anymore. It doesn't do anything. But to continue getting that money or some of it and to continue to have a game on that weekend, you put South Carolina against Alabama this year. I mean, that would have been one of the most watched, football games of the season probably just because of the implications that were on the line. I think there's a lot of interesting things in here. I mean, what's going to happen this week? What's going to come of it? What's the timeline for all this stuff? All that remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, Brent, it's essentially the SEC and the Big Ten just, calling their shots and saying, all right, we told you we were going to do this. We're going to do this. We have control over this. We're going to get the most money, and here's what we're going to do. It's wherever those two conferences want is what we're going to get.
Well, and remember this too. It's not going to affect 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're in a current deal that you're in right now. So you're not coming with an expanded playoff in 25. This is all going to be for 26 when the revenue split becomes totally different. I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get more money. I mean, for SEC and Big Ten schools, even the ones who don't have the huge budget, this is the gap year. Right, you got to get through 25 in a bit of a gap year, and then you're talking about bringing in a significantly more amount of money with TV deals and the college football playoff. The way that split's scheduled to take place, potentially expanded playoffs. So 26 can look a lot better financially. In 25, you're just kind of let's get there. We get through this gap year a little bit, but nothing with any of these playoff discussions that are going to come out this week and be talked about are going to yield in 25. It's all going to be about what it looks like in 26 and beyond. 26 through 31 is the next is that TV agreement that is scheduled to go.
And then if we can just kind of continue as we're getting away from amateur model, we get more towards the NFL model. We talked about OTAs last week. We're not going to talk about it now, but if we can get a night where it's a made-for-TV schedule release that's not during the season, but it's in the off-season, then you're seeing this calendar kind of mirror that of the NFL, and I think eventually that's kind of what we're going to be in here the next couple of years is Trying to make it a year-round thing and not just a seasonal thing, that being college football.
Well, what the NFL does that nobody gives them credit for is they have an event every month.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, there's something of note in the NFL every month. You have the Super Bowl in February. You know, at the end of February, 1st of March, you got the combine. Then you got draft discussion. Then you're going to have the draft. Then you're going to go free agency. Then you go OTAs. Then you go training camp. Then you go preseason games. Then you're into the regular season.
Oh, May is the schedule release. The month of May is.
The schedule. I mean, they have an event every month to capture attention. The NFL has done that so much better than any other league out there,
100%.
Amateur or pro. They have created storylines for their sport 12 months out of the year by events they've created.
And it's awesome because you're dialed in year round. Like that you don't check out for months at a time. So I think from a fan's perspective, that's awesome. And hopefully, we're seeing it kind of like with this, but hopefully college football, at least in my opinion, continues to go in that direction.